Welcome to this session. My name is Rob Turpin. I'm Head of Sector for Healthcare in BSI Knowledge Solutions. And I'm joined today by some panelists from UCL Department of Science, Technology, Engineering and Public Policy, who are currently undertaking a student research program in collaboration with BSI. And I'll allow them to properly introduce themselves in a moment. Could you move on to the next slide, please? Thank you. So I want to talk a bit about the aims of this session first. So healthcare is a key focus area for BSI Standards, both from the perspectives of regulation and for innovation. And so I was delighted to become involved in this collaboration opportunity with UCL in order to undertake some research into the emerging market of connected and intelligent medical devices. And so just a brief outline of what we'll be talking about this morning. First of all, my UCL colleagues will spend about 15 minutes sharing the details of the collaboration project they are undertaking with BSI. And then following this, we would like to open up a discussion and gain some participant input. And this will be structured into three areas. We want to cover regulation and standardization. We want to have a discussion around safety and security of connected devices. And then we also want to talk a bit about innovation and trends. And we'll share more details of these three themes further on in the presentation. If everybody's happy with that, I'd now like to hand over to Natalia and Song, who are going to pick up the discussion.
Thank you very much, Rob, for introducing us. And good morning. Thank you to all the participants for joining us today. My name is Natalia. I'm originally from Poland, and I am a UK qualified solicitor with experience of working in international commercial law. In this project team, I'm responsible for project management.
Hi everyone, I'm Song. I'm from Singapore and I've been working in the public service for the past 10 years and I've been focusing on technology policy. In this project team, I'm responsible for communication with regulators, policy organizations, and academics. We are a part of a team of 5 students pursuing a Master's in Public Administration from the University College London's Department of Science, Technology, Engineering and Public Policy. In short, it's known as STEEP. STEEP is a unique interdisciplinary department which brings together a diverse range of academics, policymakers, practitioners, and science and engineering experts, and the department facilitates the use of science, engineering, and policy to tackle complex global challenges. Besides Natalia and myself, our team comprises Gabriela, who heads our communications with our project partner, BSI, Mala, who heads our communications with companies dealing with connected and intelligent medical devices, Jan, who oversees our project ethics, data protection, and risk assessment processes. We are honored to be mentored by Dr. Irina Bras, who is a lecturer in regulation, innovation, and public policy at UCL STEEP. This group project is the final and most important output of our master's degree. What is this BSI student research program? So our project partner is the BSI, which I believe you are all very familiar with. BSI produces around 2,500 standards every year, and BSI often incorporates research into the standards development process, including research conducted at the postgraduate level. The student research program therefore serves to match postgraduate research projects with BSI research needs. We are pleased to be given this opportunity to work with BSI and believe that its unique position between the industry and policymakers would provide us with valuable real-world experience. At the same time, we hope that the primary field research which we will be conducting will benefit the world of standards. Moving on to the BSI team who are supporting us. So to the right of the picture, we'll see Rob, who heads BSI's engagement with the healthcare sector, and Paul, who is key in supporting us on technical knowledge pertaining to medical devices. The BSI team is also supported by Matthew, who oversees education development, and Jill, who has been providing us with valuable guidance on our research methodology.
We will now tell you a little bit more about our research project, its scope, and why are we undertaking it in the first place. First, why deal with connected and intelligent medical devices? As many of you may know, medical devices are highly regulated around the globe. For instance, the European Union has updated its legislation in this area in 2017 and introduced 2 regulations, the Medical Device Regulation and the In Vitro Device Regulation, which replaced the earlier directives in the field. Through regulation, public authorities intend to protect consumers, serve public interest, and ensure patient safety when devices are placed on the market. There is also a range of standardization initiatives, and standards are used in Europe to demonstrate conformity with regulations. However, there is also a lot of innovation in the field of medical devices, and devices are increasingly connected to computer networks. It is feared that this increased connectivity may introduce new challenges to patient safety and device security. Overall, new digital technologies disrupt the established regulatory frameworks. Fast change may mean that regulators have to catch up with innovations and that there may be regulatory gaps that may be arising. As a result, in this context, our hypothesis is that standards may play an important role in this life-saving area. In particular, they may offer stability and predictability. As a result, we have identified 4 main aims of our project. First, we want to analyze the global role of standards in addressing security of intelligent and connected medical devices. This global perspective on standards is extremely important in this area. This is because currently 95% of BSI standards have a European or international component. So it is crucial that UK opinions are properly represented and aligned with international standardization developments. Secondly, we also want to understand cyber risks across the entire supply chain. In this context, it's crucial not only to focus on the medical device itself, but with growing connectivity of devices and a range of actors involved in product lifecycle, it is increasingly becoming apparent that there are multiple potential failure points coming out across at any point in the supply chain. So it is important to look more broadly. We also want to investigate the problems between organizational boundaries. For instance, in the UK, there are several regulators who focus on different aspects relating to healthcare: medical device safety, information security, health and social care, professional practice. Traditionally, the boundaries have been very well defined, but the rise of small devices creates potential challenges here. Smart devices may fall under the remit of various public authorities, creating quite a complex enforcement and regulatory landscape that may be very difficult for manufacturers and clinicians to navigate. And finally, given the fast technological change in this area, we want to explore the main trends and innovations emerging in the field to understand the possible challenges and how regulations and standards could address them. After all, supporting innovation and complementing regulations is one of the key aims of BSI Standards. So it is crucial for us to understand the direction of innovation and the possible implications. For our project, we will be using a range of data collection and analysis methods. This includes interviews with stakeholders in the field of intelligent connected medical devices, survey, which will be soon online on the BSI website. We are also planning to attend various industry meetings and conferences to present our research and engage with stakeholders in the field. Obviously, today is one of such occasions, so we are very grateful for you for joining this session. With respect to desk-based research, we are also engaging in literature review and horizon scanning. With those 2 methods, we are hoping to uncover major trends and drivers of change in order to better understand the challenges and opportunities in the field of smart medical devices. Here you can see a screenshot showing our survey, which will be shortly, probably within a week, available on BSI website, and it will be advertised, and we'll obviously encourage anyone interested to participate and fill our survey in.
So thank you. This is the main part of our session, which is the breakout session. In this session, we have 3 main areas of discussions, which was highlighted by Rob earlier, namely regulation and standardization, safety and security, and innovation and trends. For each of these areas, we will pose general questions and would welcome your valuable insights and active participation.
So this first area is about regulation and standardization, which obviously is so important in this field. As we have mentioned, there are numerous regulatory initiatives around the world addressing medical devices. For instance, there have been notable changes in the EU with the introduction of the new regulations. And these new regulations respond in many ways to the growing digitalization of medical devices, especially by focusing more on software. However, as we have mentioned, there is also so much technological change and very rapid technological advancement, which may create gaps in the field of in the regulations. For this reason, we are very interested in hearing your opinions on this area and your experiences of dealing with regulation and standardization. So we have 3 questions which we'd like to throw for discussion, and it will be very interesting in hearing your opinions and comments. First, whether you see any regulatory gaps emerging in the field of intelligent and connected medical devices, whether the new medical device regulation or the in vitro device regulation has had any impact on your work. And finally, how important, in your opinion, are standards in this area in clarifying regulatory objectives? We invite any comments and questions.
Thank you very much, Natalia and Song. Whilst we're waiting for some questions and comments to come in, just one early one I want to pick up on. It's a question that came from Lena Cordy-Bancroft, asking whether we'd be interested in presenting this at a software as a medical device workshop in July. I think the answer to that is absolutely yes. We're looking for opportunities to present this work over the coming months. Originally, we had planned to use the BSI AMI International Medical Device Conferences as a outlet for doing that, and obviously with those being postponed to later in the year, we are looking at separate opportunities. So Lena, we will be in touch with you specifically about this, but also if anybody else has opportunities of where we would they'd be interested in us presenting and speaking about this project, we would be more than happy to do that as well. So some questions coming in. I'm going to have a look at the questions coming in. So first of all, from Catherine Grant, there is a difficult divide between wearables and connected medical devices. Health and fitness products may not be subject to medical device regulation. Should they be? I've got an answer for that, but I wonder if either of our panelists would like to tackle that one.
Yes, I may chip in and just underline that this is definitely an area that we have been focusing in our research, and we've been addressing this question. And well, it is definitely quite a big headache and a question mark for regulators, especially. And I think this just shows the importance of standards in a way, given because there's so much technological change. Several years ago, probably none of us would imagine how big wearables would get and how important role they would play in people's life and healthcare and wellness. And this just shows how quickly this field is evolving. And regarding whether they should be subject to medical regulation, well, I think obviously now with the medical regulation, it's the intended purpose of a device is key, which in the case of such wearables, it's a bit unclear as to what purpose they serve. So I think one of the important goals for the regulation would be to clarify the division between wellness devices, wearables, and address this a little bit more. So that rather than like being a clear answer, that's just a little bit more context. So Rob, over to you, I guess.
Thanks very much for that. And yeah, I totally agree with that. And I think one of the things we've started to see at BSI is a convergence at international standards level between medical device regulatory standards, so those that are aimed specifically at providing conformity to the regulations, versus standards that cover health software generally, so in a more generalized environment. And what we're starting to see now is more commonalities, more alignment between those best practices and those specifications. A good example of where we've addressed this in the past is about 5 years ago, we published a standard looking at the quality and the safety of healthcare apps. Now, the market we were looking at there was particularly the borderline cases, or the non-regulated healthcare apps, and really trying to address what was described to me as the Wild West of hundreds of thousands of apps appearing in app stores claiming to have healthcare benefits, but actually very few of them were based on any clinical evidence, and very few of them had actually been through any sort of formal regulatory approval. So what we tried to do in that instance was look at the criteria that are used within medical device regulation, and look at applying similar principles for products that sit outside the regulation. So I think where we would like to get to with all of this is, rather than thinking about whether certain types of devices should sit under the regulations or not, this might be more about developing standards that are well aligned, so that regardless of whether you have to go through regulatory approval or not, you're broadly following the same principles in terms of safety and performance and looking at efficacy. I'm going to move on to a second question now. We've actually had two very similar questions that have come in, both relating to artificial intelligence. Are there any guidelines or standards for quality assurance of artificial intelligence in medical devices? And then another commenter saying it's not yet very clear what state of the art is for machine learning and artificial intelligence. UCL, would you like to pick that up at all? And I can add in a little bit about what BSI is doing in that space.
Yes, I would like to chip in a little bit. Completely agree with the sentiment that AI is definitely one of the very big problems here, and how AI plays in the context of medical devices. And obviously, from our initial research, it clearly appears that some AI creates specific issues regarding classification, security, and there obviously is an obligation to meet the general obligations for medical devices, but there is very little guidance actually. And as far as we are aware, one of the main general frameworks is the FDA's AI framework. But I agree, this is there are definitely gaps here, and we are aware that BSI is actually, under Rob's leadership, doing quite a lot of work in this area, having identified certain important gaps regarding such issues as classification, transparency. But I'll hand over to Rob, who is a specialist, I think, on this subject.
Thank you, Natalia. So this is all very timely at the moment, because BSI is about to publish a further white paper on artificial intelligence as a medical technology. And this is work we've been undertaking with our US counterparts, AMI, who have been involving FDA in the discussions, as well as us involving MHRA in the work that we've been doing. And what we've been looking at is the ways that artificial intelligence can differentiate itself from what I call conventional or traditional medical software. So there are a number of different things that can happen in terms of it being able to update itself or refine its output in real time, the level of autonomy it provides, and so on. And that generates a number of risks or hazards that we need to think about in terms of medical device regulation. So in the next week, if you look at next week, there should be a communication both from BSI and AMI relating to a new white paper that we're about to publish. Off the back of that, we're hoping to start a rapid standardization program. So that will involve expertise from the UK and US, and will be driven by BSI and AMI. And what we're looking to do is develop guidance documents very quickly that relate to the existing medical device regulatory standards. So for example, our starting point is going to be in relation to risk management. We want to develop some guidelines for how artificial intelligence developers in a medical device setting consider the hazards and risks relating to artificial intelligence, and what are the particular things that you need to look for. We want to capture this in a guidance document, and we want to be able to align that with the requirements within ISO 14971. Off the back of that, if we can get some guidance out quickly, we want to test it in the market, and then ultimately this will become a base document or a basis for an international standard through our traditional ISO IEC development processes. So I guess in summary, lots happening in this space, and please keep an eye out for what's coming forward. There's one or two questions that have come in that are quite specific, which I think we would like to try and answer offline, if that's okay. But I've got another one here from Trudy Ward, and it says, as an outsourced software development business, we consider standards essential to help us clarify regulatory objectives. And we use standards to help define the relationship we have with our clients, particularly in how we support their compliance with regulations. We're currently exploring two standardization challenges. Firstly, the validation of cloud-based software tools in line with ISO 13485, which is the quality management system standard for medical devices. And secondly, the application of IEC 62304 to machine learning. 62304 is software lifecycle. UCL, do you want to pick up on anything there? Does that help with some input into your research?
Yeah, that's definitely a very interesting point, and obviously very software in the context of medical devices is one of the big areas that we are exploring. So it's very interesting to hear about the specific standards that you're engaging with and the challenges you're facing. We'll be interested to hear a bit more about how you engage with the standards in this area and with those two standards, and how are you as an organization, how are you addressing that problem?
And if I just pick up on that as well. So when we've been looking at software as a medical device, we try to pick out the key horizontal standards that impact across lots and lots of different devices. Obviously, quality management systems and software lifecycle are two of the key things that we're looking at in this space.
If I can pick up, we've got one very interesting comment from Lena, thank you, that using standards to clarify regulatory objectives can be very tricky because we get very different people involved in the process and in the regulation. And that's sometimes very hard to interpret the trend of regulation. And that's a very interesting point. Thank you very much. I think, I don't know if any participants have any other experiences of this occurring, of actually having problems with engaging in standards and understanding what the regulation is intending to achieve.
And actually, so while we're there, Lena's made another comment about FDA has recently released a lot of guidance documents on software, cybersecurity, etc. And will this guidance be used by BSI to ensure alignment? One of the things we want to do is create a partnership, a closer partnership, and maintain a closer partnership with AMI, which is the US Standards Organization for medical devices. And medical software, and they provide a really useful access point for us to communicate with the FDA. So I think very much yes. I think as a starting point for a lot of these things, rather than putting new work item proposals straight into ISO, which can take a long time to develop, we want to try and do some of the background work as a UK-US collaboration. So certainly FDA is of interest, and AMI is a standards body, and how we can collaborate together. In the interest of timeliness, I think it might be useful if we can move on to the next slide and the next set of questions, please.
Okay, so let's move on to the second category about patient safety and security, cybersecurity in particular. So the increasing connectivity of medical devices to computer networks is thought to bring about new opportunities for the healthcare industry. However, this increased connectivity may also introduce additional risk to patient safety and software or device performance. We would therefore like to hear from the participants regarding some of the main challenges you foresee or may have encountered across the supply chain for intelligent and connected medical devices, as well as some of the main problems for patient safety. In addition to patient safety, we would also like to hear about cybersecurity challenges that you could have encountered. So in either one of these areas, if you have any inputs, we would like to hear from you.
And I'm going to go straight to a question that's been raised by Dave Bottom, who says, "Hi, very good subject and discussion. I'd be interested in the panelists' ideas as to how best can the regulations and standards address safe use in combination. For example, device A manufactured by company A, B and C can be used in safe combination with the device it connects to, and so on." So I think this is really coming into this supply chain piece where traditionally we've thought about safety from a product perspective, but actually now we're having to think across the entire supply chain. So, Song and Natalia, do you have any thoughts about that?
So we do see that in view of the increased connectivity of devices, the lines between different regulations are being blurred, or even between different regulatory bodies. So, for instance, in the past, for a medical device, a traditional medical device, it's in the case of an incident, it could be attributed very likely to the device manufacturer. But in the case of connected devices, should we attribute this error to a combination of manufacturers, the users, the patients, or even software or data storage providers? I think this is where there might have to be different regulatory bodies coming together, and there must be an overall coordinator in the field of trying to connect different types of regulations across different industry, trying to address a common need. As to who could be this case, in the field of medical devices, perhaps the NHSX would be an appropriate party, but this is something that we are still trying to test out and figure out in our research.
Thanks, and I totally agree with you. NHSX within the UK is the body that's trying to pull together several different regulatory perspectives, whether that's a product or a clinical service or professional practice. So there are some steps that are being made there. Something that's come up in our artificial intelligence work has related to the fact that as we move forward, we're just going to have to be a lot more collaborative in the way that we do things, so that it's, when developing a new product or a new piece of software, it's going to have to involve clinical services, it's going to have to involve healthcare professionals, academia, researchers, and so on, to a much greater degree than we have done in the past. Have you, any of the panelists got any sort of thoughts on that, whether this is mainly about collaboration?
Yes, I think for now, we think that stakeholder engagement is the most important, and that's where everybody's views have to be taken into consideration for it, not only in terms of domestic collaboration, but internationally as well, because connected devices would necessarily mean that borders are no longer the main concern. So the borderless nature of this means that international collaboration is also required.
And another comment that has come up is we often very much look at a technology. So we'll look at traditional technology standards. Should we be looking specifically at the flow of information from connected devices? Because I think sometimes in the past we're led to just think about a single product in isolation. We're not driven to think about how information flows from that medical device into a healthcare system and the external environment. And certainly in the medical device regulations, there's an explicit mention of looking at risks between the interface of the device and the IT environment in which it operates.
We definitely think that looking at the data flow is a very important aspect of this area of intelligent and connected medical devices. So some of the preliminary research we read indicates that the use of connected and intelligent medical devices would have, of course, both cyber and physical impacts. So that's why this data flow could potentially have real-world risk. This is why this is important. So for instance, a cyber attack is no longer about data theft. It may compromise the proper functioning of medical devices implanted in a patient's body, which could lead to death. So actually, this is something that we'd like to hear from the participants about, whether this use of intelligent and connected medical devices have highlighted any risk in your process of the design or the supply, any part of the supply chain, whether you have come across any new risk arising from such devices. So for instance, not just cybersecurity in general, but about how, like for instance, a simple software code change could result in downstream impact, which may not be surfaced until later on in the process. For instance, only when the patient starts using the device. So then this risk, how can this risk be managed, is something that we are still working to highlight, to find out. But if you have come across any of this, we'd be interested to hear from you.
And apologies, I haven't got to all the questions yet, but in the interest of time, I'd quite like to move on to the third area that we wanted to discuss.
So for this third area, we'd like to discuss about innovations and trends in the field of intelligent and connected medical devices. We are aware of a wide range of innovations in this field. Due to a wide range of use cases and benefits offered by such devices, there are many startups, SMCs, and MNCs active in this area. We are therefore keen to understand some of the main trends and innovations you observe that could emerge in this field of connected and intelligent medical devices. So, for instance, what are some of the main trends? In addition to that, what are the key challenges or risks that these trends and innovations may create? And how do you think regulations and standards could help to address these new challenges?
Thank you. I'd like to come in with a question here if possible. So in terms of BSI standards, up to a few years ago, our main market was organizations that either already had a product on the market or organizations that were very, very close to placing a product on the market. But one way or another, they had a good idea around what they needed to do regarding regulatory compliance. I think over the time, our focus has looked much more at the innovation space. But a question that always comes up is, when should innovators, when should startups really start looking at regulations and standards? What's the best point within the innovation journey? I wonder if you've got any insights into that.
While waiting for the questions to come in or the inputs to come in, maybe I could share our own views at this point. So in terms of when the startups should come in, I think the thing with regulations is that it's often seen to inhibit innovation. But I think what startups have to be aware of is minimally what are the baseline requirements or regulations in this space. So at least when you design the product, you know the baseline or the red line requirements. And then with that, you could engage the regulators further if there needs to be an update to these regulations. I mean, that's the view that we hold as of this point, but happy to hear further from the participants.
And I guess a question I've got linked to that is there more that BSI could be doing to support innovators in this space and throughout their development journey? Should we be creating a front door for healthcare innovators where they can quickly identify the information that they need? Now, I'm aware that academic institutions such as UCL have access to British standards through their libraries, but is there anything more that we could be doing in this space? And in fact, we've had a comment immediately in on that, saying yes to the front door for innovators. Certainly considering usability and human factors. So yeah, something that we should be thinking about. I was going to go back to one earlier question that we had that I missed out. It's from Rebecca Wright. And she asks, where software can be downloaded and the software is placed onto a customer's own device, a risk is therefore unknown. And how can this be reviewed? Would either of you like to comment on that one? I think there are some specific answers we can give in that space, and maybe that's something we might want to just take offline.
I think one key consideration, I'm not sure whether it's a definite answer, but I think who determines whether this risk is acceptable or not is something that has to be considered, whether it's up to the patient, in this case, the patient is the customer, to determine that this is an acceptable risk that can be managed against the benefits that this piece of software can provide, is one part of it. The other part is whether it should be the patient or whether it should be the regulator or the healthcare provider. This is something that has to be considered first before deciding how this can be reviewed and who should be the one deciding an acceptable level of risk.
And in fact, we've had another comment coming in saying absolutely that we need to engage and be available from the outset, and it's suggesting the prototype stage. Not just what, but with privacy and security patterns as well. So I guess this is one of the challenges for BSI. We have a huge catalogue of standards covering medical devices and covering health software. How do you direct people to exactly the right things at the right time? And a really good comment here coming in. There's such a rush to get things onto the market that they fall back on the traditional bits, app or IoT patterns, architectures and codes. They will not stop to read the standards. And even if they can afford to buy them or take time to find them, the place to reach them is in the incubators. So maybe sort of turnkey examples, patterns and templates and discussion boards are being suggested. So this is really interesting. So it's non-traditional ways of accessing standards compared to organizations that already have a product on the market and can probably navigate the standard system a lot better.
I think we are quite glad to hear this because it sort of validates what we hope to achieve from this project. So Abigail might be glad to know that one of the outputs that we are aiming for is to have a guide for startups or SMEs or basically anybody in this space who may not be, who just may not engage with the regulations. So our guide would hopefully be a simple and something easy to refer to and which may help to guide people from the onset to engage with regulations.
Thank you. So at this point, unfortunately, I'm going to have to start drawing this session to a close because the next plenary session is starting in less than 5 minutes and we need to allow people some time to transfer across. I'm conscious there's a couple of comments that came in through chat and a few Q&As that have come in that we haven't had a chance to answer yet. And I will make an effort to get back to those inquirers with answers. So we will commit to doing that. We're also going to be available in the knowledge marketplace. So from 12:50 until 1:20 today, all of us will be available for discussion if you would like to talk about any of this further. I'd like to thank my colleagues from UCL for their presentation and participation in this collaboration project. Would you like to talk through how people can get in touch with you directly?
Yes, sure. So if any of you would like to provide more insights, would like to get involved in our project, we would like to invite you to get in touch with us through our email address, medtechproject@ucl.ac.uk, our LinkedIn page, which we have provided the link here. And finally, we also have a website to our UCL department if you'd like to find out more about this innovative and very new department that we have from UCL. So thank you for joining us for this session. Thank you, Rob, for hosting this session. And we hope to hear from all of you in the subsequent phases of our project.
Thank you. So look forward to hearing the outcomes from this project later in the year. For those who are interested, a recording of this webinar will be available after the event, and we're all happy to continue this discussion. The more input, feedback, comments that we can get for this, the better outcomes for this program. So yeah, really interested in your support. Please come and talk to us in the marketplace at 12:50. And finally, I would like to thank all of the attendees who've joined and contributed to this session today. It's been really well attended, looking at the numbers I'm seeing down here. So thank you very much for your participation, and I hope you enjoy the remainder of this event. Thank you.